Hello, how are you? It's me, LB. Welcome to the Reshuffle. Today we are going to use a combination of the Mystical Shaman Oracle deck and the Heroine Tarot. I will list both those decks in the description box below. This reading is for whoever it calls to. As always, take what applies and let the rest fly. Messages and energies are fluid. We could be talking to you, someone you're dealing with, an experience that's happening to you literally, an experience that's happening to you spiritually, behind the scenes. Take it as it resonates if it does. Now, part of the reason I wanted to combine these two decks for our reading today is because the Mystical Shaman Oracle, it's really earthy. It's really gritty. It's obviously very, very ethereal in nature. Kind of reminds me of a mushroom. It says and keeps so much beneath the surface, whereas the Heroine Tarot is much more direct. It grabs your attention. It's very straightforward and modern and attractive. And there's something about this season of retrogrades and the season of eclipses that we are entering into is really trying to polish up, I feel, a lot of your very basic primal, even like the grittiness within a lot of your giftings is coming forward. There's something really interesting in the energy right now about feeling as though you might be in trouble, a sense of paranoia. There's a sense of a pause, and a lot of you may be attributing it to being in trouble or making a misstep. There are actually a very few instances where there might be some projection coming in, or even someone or something intentionally trying to make you feel as though like you are going to receive bad karma or like the shoe is going to drop. None of that's actually happening. What you're hearing right now is the sound of insulation, is what we'll call it. A lot of you are entering into a very hermited phase, entering back into the cocoon. It's almost a feeling of, and I felt this yesterday, of right before the retrogrades, a lot of the energy starting to pick up, starting to move. I don't know where you live, but where I live, the groundhog said, spring wasn't going to come for another few weeks, but spring already feels like it's here. Spring feels like it's even arriving early. But I'm not the only one who's felt that. But yesterday I noticed, as all of this retrograde energy starts to trickle in, that the collective energy felt like it was moving forward, and then all of a sudden, slowly push back into the retrogrades. If you were experiencing things like vertigo, nausea, like literal physical like instability, like clumsiness, you might have been like very sensitive to the retrogrades really pulling us all down in a very slow enclosure and a very deep container. And so again, I think that cards like the Hangman, I think cards like the Hermit, even the Queen of Cups might be coming out a lot for you. The Four of Pentacles, the Four of Swords, cards indicating rest, cards indicating being at a stasis, a pause, temperance, integration, and even the Queen of Cups, her experience is deeply internal. The Queen of Pentacles is also a very internal card as well. So those might be signs that are coming up for you to confirm that like you're kind of on this timeline, that you're sort of on this track. But it feels like a really condensed and accelerated cocoon phase, that you enter into this little container of these retrogrades, of this next eclipse season, and so much gets rectified, so much gets polished up, so much wisdom gets downloaded in, that it feels as though in a process of, I don't know, 6 weeks, you somehow gain not just like the grace and the polishing, but also the instructions that you've needed maybe over the last 6 years, which I think really ties into, and there's a definite note of like, and none of that was your fault, but there's definitely a note here about divine timing, that when it's not the right time, there is nothing you can do, no matter kick it, screaming, praying, petitioning, that's gonna make that thing happen for you. But when it is your time, when it is your season of elevation, nothing can stop it. No hater, no malocchio, none of the stupid shit you're probably doing and not realizing. You just can't stop the rock. And so there's something really beautiful, and we're gonna return to the rock in a moment. So there's something really beautiful about feeling as though I'm at a pause, but I can tell there's a lot going on behind the scenes on my behalf. Because you've maybe had so many unpleasant experiences within your spiritual journey and just within the world, there might be an immediate assumption that what's going on behind the scenes is bad. It's to trip you up, it's to trick you, it's to teach you another dirty little lesson, right? But now is the time, and you're probably receiving a lot of messages about leaning on faith, about having faith that like the divine, the universe, even like these subconscious aspects of yourself that are moving on your own behalf really do want the best thing for you, are enacting positively on your behalf, are interceding in order to assist and relieve and support you. So again, when that little paranoia or that it's very quiet, what's happening, I'm feeling nervous, please do your best to allow faith, to allow the confidence that I know you've been working on to occupy that space until the proof in the pudding really starts to trickle in. Now, when I was shuffling, there was an interesting collection of cards that came out for you. The first of which was the Star and the King of Swords. Now, this is really beautiful, and the Heroine Tarot is a feminine and a kind of non-binary exclusive a feminine and a non-binary representation in the deck exclusively. So all of the kings are presented in like a very feminine way, but this energy is very, very sharp. And it immediately came forward with this idea of astrology, that sometimes divine timing is quite literally like the proper astrological timing. And I'm noticing all of these butterflies behind the King of Swords. And I want to say the King of Swords represents this watcher energy. It's something, it's a presence, it's an essence that exists within the spiritual realms. And I almost want to say, it almost reminds me of the Nords or like of the Fates. It's this watcher that isn't necessarily a sign only to you, but like you are part of, I don't know, you're part of the collective that it watches over, and it waits for the right lunation. It waits for the, what's that song? When the moon is in the 7th house, and it's the Age of Aquarius song. That's kind of all it does. It sits there and it watches the sky and it waits to release the butterflies, which is funny because that's always a line that brings me back to Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. Why couldn't have been follow the butterflies? Perhaps there's been like such a history of you having to follow a lot of really sketchy and shady and ominous like signs and breadcrumbs to get where you are. So there's something about they sit and they wait and they watch the sky to begin sending you the signs of improvement, because the Chariot and the Six of Wands comes up next. So first and foremost, there's definitely like this funny icy hot energy. These are very cool. These are Aquarian energies. Aquarius is a fixed sign in my practice. The kings are fixed because they don't move. They're not that dynamic. They act a lot as figureheads. And the stars, they live permanently in their constellations. So again, there's something about, I almost want to say like you might have this consistent feeling of like being watched in some way. Some of that just might have to do with the fact that like you're very sensitive energetically, and so in some capacity like you are being watched. It's like you're aware that like your guides are watching over you and your guardian angels and your ancestors and stuff like that. But again, this energy, it sits and it waits for the right astrology to begin sending certain sets of signs. And now the particular set of signs, which I feel like have already started to come in, and you maybe, I feel like you're trying to believe them, but there's a little like, yeah, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining, that things are improving with the Six of Wands. I also feel like there's a lot of compliments coming through the spirit right now for you. You would do well to learn to receive them, You may be having messages from readers or things coming in intuitively, or lines from songs or dialogue from movies saying things like, we're proud of you. You've worked so hard. You should celebrate yourself. You should acknowledge what you've done. You might be going, yeah, I'm not where I want to be, but you should heed a lot of those compliments because they don't always come in. So often what comes in our spiritual journey is the stuff that like we need to be doing, or ways we need to be more tempered, or where we need boundaries. A lot of it is very instructional. It's not always as celebratory. And so in this moment, not that we're not always worth celebrating, but like, you know how it is. If you're here, like you're about that life. And so there's something here about compliments and acknowledgments and recognition for the work that you've done on yourself, in yourself, spiritually, behind the scenes, that no one else except you, me, and these cards know about. That's being acknowledged here. But this is also an indication of kind of what's to come. The Chariot is a purposeful card. You know, throughout history, chariots weren't just sent out for groceries, right? They were sent to war. They were sent from a monarch. They were sent with a divine purpose through the divine right of kings, right? They have authority, they have a permit in order to go forward and be successful. And so there's an acknowledgement here, especially with the King of Swords often representing a judge, that yes, there have been a lot of banana peels in your ways. Yes, there has at times been a lot of delays. There have been maybe some unfair interferences. Like, there's just been a lot of hiccups. And in part, some of those hiccups were to slow you down because it just simply wasn't your time. And again, when it's not your time, it doesn't matter how much kicking and screaming is going on. But when it is, again, nothing can stop it. Just like this chariot, just like this vehicle of war, it cannot be stopped. Because I also think that there's something interesting about the binary energies from the light and dark. What are panthers? I guess these are panthers. Panthers, lions, whatever animal is associated and attached to the chariot card in your deck, right? Because that is giving me this impression of having authority and standing from multiple realms as well, not just like the higher angelic, in our highest good realms, but also in those rough and tumble, gritty, infernal, shadowy realms as well. There's a sense of having the authority and being guaranteed in some way support and assistance in being successful in whatever this objective is for you as you move forward. And again, it comes from the light and the dark. The support comes from both realms, not just one or the other. That, in an essence, also confirms, I want to say, that you are on a mission, that you do have a specific spiritual purpose. And something they've been talking to me a lot about is specialty. A lot of you are going to be understanding what your specialty is. It's the idea of, well, my divine purpose is I'm a healer. Okay, but like, what kind? Who are you meant to be healing? What are you specifically best tuned and calibrated to work on, right? There's something about a lot of you coming into your spiritual specialties. For a lot of you, it actually is spiritual work with the Seer and the Two of Wands at the bottom. Because the Two of Wands is absolutely a card of vision. And if you notice, she even holds a crystal ball. But these seers, they're both seers, they look very, very different. And so there's something interesting. I don't know if there's a Freaky Friday, the tables are turning type of energy within the collective. And so I have this feeling that people that have been occupying mantles that look really attractive, that are presented really professionally, but don't necessarily have the juice, don't necessarily have the anointing. It's like almost like nepotism. I know that sounds interesting, but it's almost the idea of like people that have been able to either look the part, play the part, buy the part. I don't know how, I don't know when or why, but there's sort of this feeling of those being switched. In a lot of instances, if there are people clogging up the line in spaces that actually don't pertain to their anointing, I don't necessarily see anything bad happening to them. But I most certainly see them being redirected by something else that seems really shiny and interesting, creating room for those who maybe are not presented in maybe as much of a polished way, but actually have the anointing for it. So that might be something very specific that someone has been asking for. But again, we have this icy hot energy of actually the time to release the butterflies, the series of encouraging, confidence building, recognizing, and celebratory messages, signs, omens are beginning to start coming in. And after we receive enough of them, they basically tip the scales into action. And so I feel like over the course of the next few weeks, you may also start feeling the rising action to move and to innovate and to curate begin. But there is patience that's required here because you're not at the chariot phase yet. That might actually be literally representing Cancer and Leo season later this summer, because the Six of Wands does represent Jupiter and Leo, and the Chariot is associated with Moon, the sign of Cancer, right? Now, in between these two cards, we have the Sweat Lodge and we have the Journey. So this is what's happening in the in-between. Right now, you're in a hermit phase, you're cocooning. Again, you were kind of running forward, picking up speed, then the retrogrades kind of threw you back into the cocoon. But in this container, you have an accelerated metamorphosis. But in between the icy and the hot, now we're moving, we have the Sweat Lodge. And the Sweat Lodge is a place of journeying. It's a place of wisdom seeking and guidance, but it's also a place of purification. And the Sweat Lodge literally feels like a brewery, almost like we are distilling these different parts of the journey, because this Journey card, he looks toward it from the floor up. He's really gone through the jungle. And as we've discussed, in archetype, the jungle or the forest or the wilderness, they represent these places of psycho-spiritual initiation. And so you literally maybe have come through and popped out of the forest. But before you go off on your victory tour, we gotta clean you up a little bit. Again, there is a sense of, for those of you that really do have the juice creatively, artistically, psychically, like wherever it is in the world that where your mantle is, knowing that maybe you haven't had the time, the support, the care, the resources to really like polish things up in the way that you want, this is part of your polishing. And in essence, there's also something about being able to distill and understand the journey that you just went on. And that's going to take you a minute, but it's a minute worth taking here. It's not about obviously forgetting the journey that you've been on. A lot of you would probably prefer to forget the journey of maybe your childhood or how you got to this point or that relationship or that spiritual experience that you had, right? But what we can do, we can't take it away from you. We can't pretend like it didn't happen to you. We can't pretend like it didn't impact you. But what we can do is separate the wheat from the tare, the meat from the bones, and really distill the wisdom, the lessons. What were the warning signs? What were the encouraging things? What did you pull out of it? How did you make lemonade, right? How did you survive? Part of it is the dissection of your own mythology in a way, which one will help you build confidence. But again, from like an archetypal aspect, it will show you like those different mountains and those different pathways that you took and how they led to X, Y, and Z. This is a really important digestion point towards you, for you. Because we also have the Council, card number 11, which is a number of alignment coming forward. It's also a number that is often used to represent healers as well. And it came with the Vision Quest. And so this, on one hand, it reminds me a little bit of the Hunger Games, kind of the way it was presented, but also a little bit in reverse, how Katniss was, and all of the contestants, they were living their normal lives, right? And then they're scooped up in the Hunger Games, and then they're put like through with a designer, right? Kind of like a Senna who takes them and helps them polish up and become refined and represent, I was gonna say, like, represent their home, represent their people, represent their culture in a way that is really cohesive and really put together, in a way that frankly is marketable, in a way that is attractive. Again, there's something here about spaces not being available for some of you on the mantles and in the areas that you've been divinely commissioned to appoint, because they had, again, like they had more money, or they had an in, or they had better branding, but when push comes to shove, they maybe don't actually have the juice or the interest to maintain it. So again, they'll be probably within this retrograde time when you are distilling, when you're digesting, when you're being polished up, and maybe in ways where you're like, hey, don't touch that, I like that gritty, and it's like, yeah, me too, but let's maybe round it out a little bit, right? Part of this is also rounding out like blind spots in an idea, in a vision, in a marketing strategy, in how you communicate in a relationship, right? That's part of where this council comes from. And it's part of where the King of Swords is as well. It's saying, hey, don't get in your own way. Accept a little bit of help, a little bit of advice here, there. Be willing to be a little bit adaptable, which is difficult when you come out of a jungle, when you come out of the wilderness and you've survived off of your own blood, sweat, and tears. The last thing you want to hear is anyone tell you what the fuck to do, because I just made it through that. Well, you're not going to tell me anything, right? But maybe we should, like, just a little bit here or there, right? Senna was not in the games, but like he knew what was happening outside of them, and that particular insight, which Katniss didn't have, allowed him to help her in a way. So again, there may be unexpected, and there's been something about like unexpected teachers, uninvited teachers, specifically if you have Scorpio placements. Scorpio's March monthly reading, there was a lot about the uninvited teacher and really needing to kind of honestly humble oneself enough to like gain a lesson you didn't know you needed, right? And again, it's uncomfortable. There's maybe a little ego death in there, because part of it is like the integration, but also the separation of the warrior within being the only archetype that you embody, or the only one that you relate to. So there may be a series of unexpected or uninvited teachers to help you overcome some of those blind spots. There may be a slight ego adjustment, practicing taking on different archetypes, different identities separate from the survivalist one that you've had to go into. There is also a process of practicing getting the rust off some of these old skills, polishing things up, working on your presentation, working on being more visible, working on actually filling up that spot. Because there's something about, I expected to occupy this space or maybe have this result, and you know, life happens when we're busy making plans, right? But after a period of long delay or deferment, losing a lot of hope and no longer working on cultivating those skills. So there actually might be a little bit of catch up involved in what you're doing as well, while you're in this sweat lodge, while you're in this kind of brief but very profound hermit phase, that you might actually be doing a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of practicing. Again, getting that rust off, catching up, getting things not just like kind of back to where they were, but then like pushing them even further. So that also may come from the council as well, that you, again, being in that chamber, it kind of reminds me of like being in doing sports when you're in high school. And it's like, you have to get up early, and there's usually a meeting, or there's usually a practice, and then you have classes, and then you have another practice, and then you shower and you eat dinner. It's kind of a very regimented thing. I see you going through like, you need to rest, you need to support and self-care the body, you also need to practice this over here. Go rest and support the body, go practice and polish this up over here. Back and forth, back and forth. It's like playing a game of doubles. So I see this actually being like a very kind of busy, productive month for you, but I don't see you necessarily being super available to the world. Like, you're very much within this container of progress, but I think that it feels really good for you when you're actually in it. Feels good to get the rust off, feels good to build up that confidence. What actually, to be perfectly honest, the amount of personalized attention that you're receiving over the next 6 weeks, back and forth between you and the divine, is also what feels really good after a long time of feeling maybe spiritually neglected or abandoned. Now is a time where you're receiving a tremendous amount of personalized attention, and there's also a lot of destiny helpers that I feel like are arriving for you. These council energies, essences, they may very likely be spiritual in nature, but I do feel like they will also be people in the flesh, creators, healers, mystic. And there's actually a lot in here about, in this sweat lodge, in this distillation, there's also a lot of purification, and a lot of you may actually be receiving a lot of support by actual energy healers. So you may be guided to commission an energy healer, or even just you're going through like the Reiki videos on YouTube. For some of you, it might be an actual like exorcism or like energy detachments, severances. For others of you, it's Reiki support. For others of you, it may be more meditative. There's a sense of, we want a psycho-spiritual ease to come in, as well as maybe a general sense of, again, exorcism or purification from the old energies, and particularly the old spirits. There's something about you don't visit certain places anymore, you don't do certain things anymore, you don't meditate on certain energies, you don't talk to certain people, but the spirits and the energies that are associated with them, it's like you're still in the loop. So it's like they visit you a little bit. So there's something about kind of detaching from those energies that you didn't even know were maybe still present, because they just keep visiting. So we need to like put them on a new path in some way. For some of you, it might be mediumship. Like, you might have actual like spirits, like ghosts. Some of you might have almost like, I feel like for some of you, you were going like, I feel like I'm haunted. And it's like you actually were. Like you had hauntings like around you. Like you needed a medium or someone to like come in and actually send those spirits away, back to the other side of the veil, right? That's the high priestess work. It's like, no. You can't know all the cosmic mysteries. The high priestess also says, no. You're dead. Like you can't bother the living all of the time. And so I feel like some of you may be getting spiritual bodyguards or bouncers or commissioning different spiritual practitioners, different witches to do extractions, to do cord cuttings, Reiki practitioners, whatever like is kind of like your jam. And maybe some of you will be guided to maybe pull from some different systems or work with different practitioners that are not kind of the normal for you. But I see you gaining like a lot of support. And part of that is also meant to remind you that not all of your spiritual work can or should be done on your own. I've had clients that have like sleep paralysis demons. They don't know what the hell to do. Like you have to come to me. I know what to do with it, right? And so a lot of you are allowing yourself, and even me, I'll be the first one to say I do a very specific type of energy healing, but the energy healing that I do for others, it does not work for me. I have to receive a different system of energy healing because it just works better for me. Like I can't get high on my own supply. Like my magic doesn't work for me. Like I have to incur it from like other places. But that's just how it works like for me in my practice. And so again, you might in the same vein say, I know how to do this, I know how to conjure that, I know how to cleanse this, I know how to center that, and that might be fine, well and dandy, but what actually might work better for you is someone else's frequency, someone else's energy healing system, someone else's way of doing a certain spell or doing a certain ritual. There's something about that. It's going to help in a really big way. So, and again, it teaches the lesson that you have all of these healing skills. Yes, you are very intuitive. You have a lot of magic at your disposal, but sometimes the techniques and the energies that will best support you, sometimes they come from other practitioners. We're meant to help each other, right? In equal and respectful ways, but we're meant to support each other. We can learn a lot from each other. And then kind of like the last thing I'll leave you with, I suppose, is just something, it's an interesting consideration and a callback to a myth that I would like to leave you with, because on the top and the bottom of the deck, we can see we have the Two of Wands and we have the Seer. I also like, not for nothing, that the Luminous Warrior is right underneath that card. Again, it's like you're not becoming this like this like whitewashed version of yourself, but you're just like slightly polished up a little bit in however this pertains to you. But on the top of the deck, I also saw the Seven of Pentacles, the Witness, and the Tree of Life. And the way that she's plucking these like little like pentacles off of this hedge is really interesting. One, hedges often talk about privacy. They talk about spiritual protection, to come underneath the hedge, the covenant of spirit, of a god, of an ancestor, right? So there's something about people literally, like, do you see how she looks like she's been going through the wilderness? I think that could be a slight note of how your experiences over time will be able to provide guardrails for other people who are going through the same thing. I also think this is something interesting about how pushy some of the energies are around you, that they will literally follow you into the most diabolical fucking situations, the most spiritually hazardous realms, just to see what the fuck you're doing, because they're so nosy. Like, I see like this chick, like she should be somewhere else. Like she should be working like a 9 to 5 right now. She should not be in the middle of like the 9th dimension just trying to like spy on you, right? Like there's something, like people are gonna get themselves hurt trying to like follow you around in the spiritual realm. It's kind of the impression that I'm getting here, not for nothing. There's something interesting there with that. There's also something here about, what was it? There was a reference to a film and a reference to the reference to the film was Kill Bill Volume 1. And particularly, I know it's such a random scene, but it's the scene when Uma Thurman, she finally gets through like the entire Crazy 88 and she finally has to fight Oren Ishii one-on-one. And as they're kind of about to like square up with their samurai swords, there's this one little clip that they put in where there's like a little water well and it fills up like a little bucket or like a little spout, and then it bloop, it just like spills over. And there's something about that moment that feels so human, that feels so awkward and almost funny and like misplaced amidst like this very serious like circumstance. One, I feel like that's kind of like this, like you may have these moments where you're like, I'm going through this very serious like spiritual distillation process, but at least like this but like this is like kind of comedic, a little comedic moment for you. But I also think that there's something, and it relates to the myth, because the myth is Prometheus, about like having to go through a tremendous amount of like initiations, of attacks, of interference, just to get to like your final boss battle. And your final boss battle is actually like being able to pursue unencumbered, unfucked with, like the actual divine purpose that is put before you. Again, and it's kind of like the Hunger Games. It's like Katniss, she wins, like she finally gets out, but now she's in like an entirely new game, right? And so there's an acknowledgement of the layering there. But part of what I want to say with this tree of life and this hedge of protection and you like plucking these off, there's this side message here, and I started it in the beginning of this reading and I cut myself off, about this weird assumption, and maybe it has to do with the crazy 88, maybe it has to do with a lot of those attacks, due to someone or something else feeling as though you had somehow taken their purpose or taken their mantle or like destiny swapped with them. Again, it's a lot of this really delusional turntable like type of energy. The myth of Prometheus is that Prometheus was said to have stolen the fire from the gods and gave it to humankind, and as punishment, Prometheus was tied eternally to this giant rock, and there's this huge eagle, and the eagle in Greco-Roman mythology is associated with Jupiter and Zeus, who is the king of the gods. And this eagle would come and peck out Prometheus's liver all day and all night, and it would just regenerate, and the eagle would come back and peck out its liver forever and ever. And now I'm gonna mix systems for a second, but in a lot of Chinese medicine, the liver is also associated with anger. So one, I feel like part of what's being distilled and what's being processed and purified is your anger, and at the very least polishing it up and turning it into something that like is really usable, right? As opposed to corrosive when we just hold it inside. It's probably being transmuted into something like gasoline for this chariot that you have up here. But the thing that's interesting is that it feels like you didn't steal the fire from the gods. Like there's this feeling that of like people pecking at you or criticizing you or gossiping about you. You may actually see an increase in gossip during this time that you're hermited, that like somehow like you took something that wasn't yours, or like you are trying to pretend like you have some big calling or some big purpose, but you really don't. And using that as an excuse to try and destiny swap with you, trying to like do some weird freaky Friday turn the tables, trying to project on you, whatever. But it's not true. That there's something here about like, even like you might be getting messages about your reputation being clear, you being innocent. You might be seeing stuff about like lambs and Jesus and spiritual court and stuff like that, because I just see that part of the tables being turned is that, again, a lot of these individuals are actually just like in the wrong space, and they'll be distracted by something sparkly and they'll just be pivoted and redirected to something else. But some of these people that took it so far, it's, again, this person isn't even supposed to be in this realm. Like they're not supposed to be in these spiritual places. Like it's actually not safe for them, but they're so nosy. There has been such an assumption that somehow collective lied, collective swindled, collective was pretending that they were like had this spiritual calling or they had this mantle in some way, and I'm gonna fucking prove it because I can do it. I'll follow them, and then meanwhile they're like lost. So I actually feel like there might be someone in particular, maybe they're literally at a distance because they're forced to witness you, but you might feel it in your spirit that there's someone at a distance that I feel like actually might lose their mind in one way or another, just because like their hair is like all nesty. See how their hair is like kind of crazy, and in a lot of cultures and in a lot of traditions, there's like an idea of like if you throw your hair outside, like after you cut it, the birds get it, and like the birds get in your head and make you crazy. Like there's like a thing about, again, stop fucking around like where you're not supposed to be, because you will get yourself hurt. You will get yourself caught up by some of these spirits. They don't all care. They don't all want to kiss you on the forehead and like give you sweet dreams, right? So there's something interesting about someone that took their assumptions of you, their delusions of you so far that they themselves began a spiritual journey or practice that wasn't even necessarily meant or safe or appropriate for them. Definitely not one that they even have the skills to be able to navigate on their own. May actually experience both feeling a little bit like they're losing their marbles, while also feeling as though they are stuck or trapped in some way and then forced. It's almost like instead of the eagle coming to pick at their anger, to pick at their jealousy, to pick at their envy and their ire towards you, they are forced to be like chained to the rock, chained to the blockage, chained to the boulder in some way, and forced to watch you pick pentacles off of this tree of life, off of this tree of God. We will judge them by their fruits. And here you are, grape, apple, orange, pentacle. And it's this weird, and it feels like it feels like this weird stare down in the spirit. And it's like they have to sit there and watch you. I almost wonder if like there's something that you said, or there's something that you prayed, like they better only, the next time they're gonna see me is on a fucking billboard. Like, and that was a message that came through somewhat recently as well. But again, it has that feeling to it of like, I didn't steal anything. You know how you can tell? Because look how freely it's given to me. One and another, right? It's a really interesting energy. I want to see, and I did see the Emperor at the bottom of the traditional Rider-Waite. Here's the Chariot again. Mom and dad. Again, there also might be something about that movie, about Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2, that might be really significant. What specifically is coming through in that movie, I forget his name. It's in Volume 2, I believe, when Uma Thurman goes to it's like a monastery where she's trained by like a kung fu master, where I don't know, I forget the particular style of martial arts that he does, but she's trained in this container, and if you see in the movie, and she's got the bowl of rice, she tries to eat it with her hands, and he's like, no, and he smacks her, and she has to figure out how to use a chopstick with her busted up hands that she's using trying to break boards. It has a little bit of that energy, but it's not, I was really about to say, but like, it's not as like laborious. And then I have the 9 of Cups, and I have the 9 of Pentacles here. It's like not like laborious and like hard, like battle like that necessarily. It's more of the miscongeniality, Hunger Games, we're gonna wax your legs and like brush your hair, get the pine cones out of your hair type of energy. But that I can't talk, the retrogrades are killing me, so it's gonna take so long to get every message out, like just for forever now. But the 9 of Cups represents Jupiter in Pisces. We're in Pisces season right now. Pisces also traditionally is ruled by Jupiter, and then we have Virgo in Venus with the 9 of Pentacles, and so that brings us right to that Virgo full moon eclipse that we're gonna have very shortly. So I think that's it. I think that's the only thing that wants to come forward. Yeah, beautiful. We have the 5 of Wands in reverse. Again, consolidating all of those disparate parts within into one cohesive, unified force and essence. That is you. Also, an end to a lot of the distractions, a lot of the interference, because you're entering into like new timelines and new spiritual systems. And again, there's something about this witness being made an example of. It's like, why is this white girl here? She's not supposed to be here. And then we have the Wheel of Fortune. Again, Jupiter, things moving in your favor in a really, really beautiful way. So this is what I have. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. Make sure you check out your March monthly readings. They're available for rent over on Patreon. We also do daily horoscopes, tarot tips, tarot spreads on Patreon. If you need some more tools for your tarot toolbox, they're over there. I am available for personal readings. I'm also offering 6-month navigator readings. So if you want to show up on purpose over the next 6 months and figure out how to navigate and use the new moons, the full moons, to your benefit on top of like your natural mundane life and your spiritual journey, you're gonna want one of those. They're really, really in-depth, but they're absolutely worth it. And make sure you keep up with me on social media and my Substack. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.